when they put me as the last speaker of the day, and I said to myself, wow, these conferences, people, they call it R&R in these conferences. It's not rest and recreation, it's register and retreat. They don't come back, So you register, make sure your name is there, you get your CPD points and you get everything else, but then no one ever sees you for the rest of the 2 days. Then you come back and pick it up tomorrow afternoon. So somebody else asked me, I said, why are you here every year? What have you got to say that, we've got to come back and pay more money this year to listen to you? And I said, well, I keep on saying this different things every time. Last time I spoke here about 2 years ago, I think, was about why estate agents didn't have their own board. Why are you still under the Valuers Act? And then everybody's, had a big round of clap for that one, but nothing happened after that. So I said the same thing in Singapore. I went to Singapore and I said, Malaysia has about 3,000 registered estate agents, and Singapore has 36,000 agents for a small island state. And yet, they make more money than all you guys here. Nothing to do with Singapore dollar, it's just that the volume of transactions are so high. So, and then there was this case about this estate agent who bought a property through his wife, bought a property in her name, and then they flipped it 3 months later for a profit of 800,000 Sing dollars. And then the owner of the property sued, saying that you cheated me, didn't tell me the right value. But he gave the value to the estate agent. He said, this is what I want for the property. I think he wanted 1.4 million. And the estate agent said, I've got somebody for you, and his wife bought it, but he didn't tell the owner that it was his wife. And so then 3 months later, they sold it for 2.1 million. And so, of course, the vendor got very angry, the original vendor, went to court. And the court agreed with him that he was cheated and forced the agent to pay him back. Until then, the agents in Singapore were not registered. Then the coin dropped. So I was asked my opinion, and I said to them, you should have a council and you should register a estate agent. So Singapore government then put together a council of real estate. And if you all go to the website cea.gov.sg, you will look it up and you will see that every Singapore agent, this is the first time around they took everybody in, all 36,000 of them, and gave them all a license. And then they said 3 conditions. Every year, you have to sell $3 million worth of real estate to keep your license. And you got to go for 3 days of CPD point training at a reputable institute approved by the Singapore government. They reckon that they started in October last year, this is the first year, they reckon by end of this year, there won't be 36,000 agents in Singapore. There are probably only about 15,000, half. So they are biting the bullet, and they're forcing people to comply with rules and regulations. It's okay for a small city like that, but very difficult to do this in Malaysia. But today I'm not going to speak about estate agents. Today I'm going to speak about selling property overseas. And we've had a pretty good season so far in Malaysia. Most developers, you ask them, they say, why do I need to sell overseas? Once I sold 70% of my project here, I don't need to sell it. I don't need to sell anymore overseas. But MPI, for the last 2 years, under my care, has been trying to market the volume of real estate coming on the market is very high. And it's not being sold as much as we think. The other day somebody asked me an interview about, they said, oh, the property prices are too high. I said, too high in relation to what? And as Mr. Elvin Fernandez pointed out, there's no fundamentals. Then the property prices are high. But if you look at across the board, it's only 3%. But specific markets are very high, like Kuala Lumpur, Penang, and Johor. And these markets are served by migration and by growth. But they're not enough to keep the volume of estate sales high enough to attract foreign direct investment. Because as values rise and rents remain the same, it's because no one's there renting it. That's why you see a lot of empty shop houses. They're being purchased for speculation. And so we see this as a real challenge, and so we need to bring foreign direct investment into the country. So when I went overseas and asked people, what do you think about Malaysian real estate? It's not that they had a good opinion or a bad opinion. They had no opinion. Because Malaysia and real estate is not on the radar. It's a great place for a holiday. Malaysia truly is a wonderful story. And so tourism is a wonderful. Kuala Lumpur is the 6th most visited city in the world. I don't know whether they're staying for 2 days or 2 hours. Just fly in Air Asia and fly out again. That's visiting also. So they land in KL, second airport. But the point is, as the 6th most visited city in the world, you should think that we should have, and we are up there with all the big giants like Singapore and Hong Kong and New York, and yet we don't have the same level of volumes. So the lack of what I call a country profile was a real challenge for MPI the last 2 years. And I wanted to know why was that? And so I looked at all the annual reports, all the international real estate agencies, the Jones Lang LaSalle, the CBRE, and all the others, even Knight Frank. And what happens is, if you look at the book and look at Asia Pacific region, Singapore has 17 pages, Hong Kong 19 pages, Indonesia 22 pages, Malaysia 2 pages. Because nobody in Malaysia is writing about Malaysian real estate going for the overseas market. Most estate agents and valuers are so comfortable dealing with the local market, there's no incentive to go and sell overseas. But developers, housing developers, are now saying that the volume of sales are shrinking locally, especially when they're opening up new markets outside the boundaries of Kuala Lumpur. And they are coming to MPI and say, help, we need to go overseas and sell some of our real estate, can you help us? So what we did the first time around was we said, let's do a profile of the country. So first of all, who we are. We are a government agency, public-private partnership between the government and the private sector. The government gives us a grant to keep it off, and the private sector contributes to this to keep running. It's owned by the Economic Planning Unit, and our job is to matchmake foreign investors with opportunities in Malaysia. So our real estate initiatives are, we have a gallery in Singapore. We opened the gallery to housing developers in Malaysia only to showcase their projects in Singapore. We also have seminars in Singapore in our gallery to tell people about opportunities in Malaysia. We also neutralize negative comments in Singapore newspapers about Malaysian property. And the last 2 years, because of our presence in Singapore, we've had no negative news on Malaysian real estate, because every time there is a negative news, the reporter will call our office and say, what do you comment? We give our reply. They put both the replies in the newspaper, because that's what newspapers in Singapore are quite good at. And once both the replies are in, the negativity is taken away. If you don't reply, then that story stays in the minds of everybody else. We have a market intelligence monitor. We send to everybody we meet a monthly report on what happens in the Malaysian market, because we have our own research team within our office. We also have NPI education. We do the Certificate of Sustainability for the College of Estate Management and the Certificate of Real Estate Investment Finance through APRIA. And then we have consumer international events and institutional networking events. We do business-to-business networking with pension funds, private equity funds, property investors, banks, and insurance companies. And we talk to them all the time. The Malaysian platform that we work with MITI, MIDA, Matrade, Pemandu, NAPIC, InvestKL, and the Ministry of Tourism. Ministry of Tourism primarily for Malaysia, my second home, which is a very valuable tool, because it also promotes Malaysia as an investment destination, because people who come here either rent and come to Malaysia, either rent or buy. I have some statistics I'll show you later. Under the primary real estate sectors, the developers, master builders, GLCs like Sime Darby, like 1MDB, economic development corridors like Northern Corridor, Iskandar, SEDCs work with us. But you can't sell the country without telling people what's in the country other than real estate. You can't sell the country, you can't sell real estate unless you tell people this is a good place to come. it's like if you were in Mauritius, how do you sell Mauritius? You can't sell Mauritius as a tourist destination. Why would anybody want to own real estate there? You got to sell the country as an investable destination for real estate. And to do that, you must show them we have very good hospitals. You must show them we have very good hotels. You must show them we have educational institutions are wonderful. People come here, they can send their children to study in very good schools. So much so now we are nearly 550,000 foreign students studying in Malaysia. Some not so desirable, but still, they're here. Financial institutions, the fact that we have Islamic Sharia compliant law and also commercial law that takes care of international real estate. We lend to foreigners. One of the few countries where you can borrow banks, foreigners can borrow from local banks to buy local real estate. And we also have professional services here. We have registered estate agents, we have registered valuers, architects, accountants. So these are important considerations for investors before they come to country. So when we go overseas, we sell them the whole thing and give them a country profile. This country profile we got together from 24 ministries. And this is available. Any of you who wants to go overseas, wants this profile, please call my office. We'll send you a thumb drive with this information. First of all, I tell them that Malaysia has 329 million square kilometers of space. So don't compare with Singapore, which has only 704 square kilometers of space. That's an island state. It's not a diverse country like Malaysia. We have a population of 28.3 million as of last count, and you can drive from Singapore to Thailand on 6-lane highways. One of the very few countries you can drive actually through on a highway. And we have connectivity. What is our connectivity? We have 1,800 kilometers of highways, 1,600 kilometers of rail, 8 international airports, 15 local airports, and you can visit 3 countries by staying in Kuala Lumpur. What are the amenities we have in Malaysia? These amenities are for the whole country. If it's only peninsular Malaysia, everything is 90%. 63% of the population lives within 400 kilometers of a transportation route. 84.5% have access to electricity. Where everybody has 2 mobile phones, we have 116% penetration. 71% of houses have clear water and clean water, and we have 64.6 broadband internet penetration, rising up very quickly. The cost of living index, you look at this, Malaysia has 57%, compared to Tokyo's 137, New York's baseline 100. We are slightly more expensive than Bangkok, Beijing, Ho Chi Minh, and Delhi. But those places are a lot more crowded than us. And so in terms of the cities of livability ranking, we are number 78. And you can look at the charts there. And looking at the property market, I'm not going to go into this because there are people who have already gone into this today, but all I want to tell you is across the whole range band, I give you a broad band. High-end condominiums still do fetch a yield of between 6 to 7%. Landed properties 3.21 to 3.8%. Why is that? Because landed properties rise in value faster than condominiums, so condominiums have a higher premium rate on rental income, not so high a premium rate on capital appreciation. And a lot of the growth will be seen in the greater Kuala Lumpur spillover effect under the economic master plan. If you look at the house price index, Malaysia and Australia are almost the same. We have less than 1% default rate over a 30-year period, the lowest in Southeast Asia in terms of default. The number of people defaulting on their housing loans is very, very small overall compared to other countries like Philippines or Thailand or Indonesia or even Vietnam. And so Australia only is slightly lower than Australia is less than 0.5%. Malaysia is below 1%. So Malaysia is seen as a very stable, long-term growth industry. When I go overseas, when I talk to foreigners, I tell them, if you want to come to Malaysia and do a Singapore style flip, don't come. Because you have to finish one cycle of property growth before you make any money. So that's the reach. You got to stay in Malaysia for at least 5 to 7 years before you see an increase in the value of real estate. If you don't have the time frame to stay here for 5 to 7 years, don't come to Malaysia. Go to Vietnam, where you can't even get your money out if you make it. But Malaysia has no such controls. We also look at we give them broad numbers and commercial square feet, 95 million square feet, 25 million square feet concentrated in the Golden Triangle area in the office market. In the next 5 years, 14.5 million square feet of new space coming in. We've had all the warning signs from all the valuers saying, oh, you know, this is very bad. You're going to have an oversupply of offices. Yes, if our economic transformation program does not take off. But if the ETP takes off, we are full. Because right now, MPI is finding that a lot of oil and gas companies from the US in services are walking through our office asking for 5-star offices near KLCC for rental, 30 to 50,000 square feet at a time. There are industries moving in from Thailand, coming to Malaysia, because they just realized that Thailand is only 2 feet above sea level. So that there could be floods again. So they are now saying, let's keep they need the assembly plant in Thailand, because we can't provide labor to manufacture those vehicles and all the the components. So they're moving their banking, their financing, their back-end offices, their computer controls, their call centers, all to Malaysia. In fact, we are entertaining 25 Japanese companies from Thailand at the end of March. So the purpose-built offices in Malaysia will grow. As you know, we've got some big brand names here who have come in. Vale from the Brazilian company is here in Malaysia, spending 7 billion in Perak to put up a center, and their offices are in KL. They have 10,000 square feet in Singapore where their board of directors are, but they've taken 60,000 square feet in Kuala Lumpur for their back-end offices and their call centers. And this is the largest iron ore manufacturing company in the world, listed on the New York Stock Exchange. They are here. Coca-Cola just opened their first green Coca-Cola plant in Ansted, and they got 150 acres, and they want to make Coca-Cola out of rainwater. How cool is that? And Malaysia is the first one to have a Coca-Cola plant in Asia. Then you look at the retail sector. Do we have too many shopping centers? They all look alike, right? So I often think that shopping centers need to have some variety. But the variety is always in the middle and the lower range. We don't have, the International Conference of Shopping Center Managers spoke to me about 2 weeks ago, and he said that Malaysia is unique in the retail sector because there's no one company that controls the retail market in Malaysia. He said in Singapore, you know, it's CapitaLand controls the retail market. In Thailand, it's the Central Group. In Vietnam, there's a group. In Indonesia, there's a large group. They control about 50 to 60%. Malaysia, no one controls the retail market. It's open. There are large groups like Sunway, and there's Pavilion, and there's KLCC, and there's One Utama, and then there's a Curve. But none of them have more than 4 or 3 or 4% of the total market. The only person who has a consistent size in Malaysia is Aeon on the Justco. And they will probably end up on the hypermarket side being the largest elephant in Malaysia in terms of hypermarket shopping center management. Because Justco will not become an anchor tenant in anybody's shopping center anymore unless you give them the whole shopping center. And then they will manage all the other tenants themselves. And they tell me they only make 2% on the hypermarket. They make 25% on subletting the space to other tenants in the same building. And they give the owners 6.5% guaranteed rental for 20 years on the property. So that's their business model. If you have any land and you want to sell it to Justco, that you show them that kind of a model, they'll buy it from you. Malaysia has also very good industrial estates. There's a big influx of FDI coming into Malaysia through our industrial estate. You know, the oil and gas, forget Linus in Gebeng. No, what I'm saying is it's only one part of a huge oil and gas complex coming up in Kuantan. It's so big that they've run out of land. And they're now going to acquire another 2,000 acres to take in all the oil and gas companies that want to do fractioning and turning into pipeline to supply the whole of Asia, especially between China and India. And one of the things we learned by accident was that the position of Malaysia is so unique that we are equidistant between India and China, and we are in the same time zone. We are same time zone as Beijing, and we are 2 hours ahead of India. Whereas UK are 8 hours behind, and Middle East is 6 hours behind. So we have about 17 Middle East banks moving to Kuala Lumpur just to service India and China and the growing market of Indonesia and Vietnam. So within a 4-hour time frame, we are able to service, and that's what Malaysia's unique selling proposition as a service and logistics center, is that we're able to service 50% of the world's population within a 4-hour time frame out of Kuala Lumpur. Singapore has the same advantage, but they don't have land. So they are forced to move out the SMEs and all the other industries back to Malaysia, and they just want to be the banking, the Geneva of Southeast Asia by being the lender of last resort to every industry that wants to borrow money in Asia. And they can't help it. They got 550 banks in Singapore. We have only 27 banks in Malaysia. So we can't compete in that on scale. But we can compete in Islamic banking because Malaysia is the largest issue of sukuk in the world. 60% of sukuk last year was issued out of Kuala Lumpur. So we look at the ratio of foreign properties in Malaysia. We're very small. That's why when somebody tells me that you have oversupply of capital values, they're not foreigners, they're locals. Because if you look at the supply, the transactions are only about 1 to 2% of total sales are sold to foreigners, compared to Singapore's 30%. But if you look at the volume, it's different. Singapore sells about 25,000 houses, creates about 25,000 homes a year. We create 130,000 homes a year. They sell 30% of that to foreigners. We sell 2%. So no way if the foreign buyer can impact on Malaysian capital values. In Singapore, if you sell 7,000 houses to foreigners, they can. So that's the difference between Malaysia and Singapore. So if you look at these areas and you look at the numbers, and you look at Malaysia, my second home participants, a lot of these people are buying condominiums, but they're only 8.5% of the MM2H participants are buying. The remainder of them are leasing property from Malaysians or staying together. Or they're not even staying here. They come here, leave their family here, rent a premises, and they go back to business wherever they come from. China, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Iran, UK, Australia, Japan, Korea. So the top tier purchasers are the British, slightly ahead of Iran and China. And the Chinese, of course, now suddenly realize that Malaysia is a cheaper alternative to Singapore. Same weather, same people, same religion, so they are now moving to Malaysia in larger and larger numbers. So finally, I want to give you the international perception of Malaysian real estate. We spend a considerable amount of time trying to educate them and understand how they are thinking about Malaysia. So we look at how Malaysians perceive those countries. If you don't go there, you look at Qatar and Saudi Arabia as just Islamic states, but they are very advanced in many, many things that we are not advanced in. So we need a very good attitude to work there in the Middle East. There's strong interest from institutional investors in Malaysia as a good alternative to them, and the expansion of the sukuk market is attractive to the Middle East investors. But we don't have enough experience and knowledge to how to deal with the Middle East markets. That's why a lot of our companies that have gone to the Middle East haven't done very well. Purely because if we don't have a G2G connection like Singapore has or like India has with the Middle East, you become a second-tier contractor or a second-tier investor under usually all the contracts are given to the Bin Laden group. Now, when you become a second tier, you are at the mercy of the main contractor. And you know what happens if the project goes down. You're the first one to be affected. So Malaysian companies are inexperienced, and the government does not support our companies going to the Middle East, which, in my opinion, we should, because the markets are huge, the funds are very good, and on a G2G basis, they're very friendly, and they give you a lot of free space and opportunities. India, of course, we have 3.2 million Indians in Malaysia, so there's a lot of energy between the two countries. Our trade between India and Malaysia after signing the free trade agreement in October last year has gone up by almost 37% this year. India is a big buyer of our palm oil, and the Indian minister said in an interview last month that if by 2020 100% of Malaysia's palm oil won't be enough to satisfy India's demand. So, and China is the same. The amount of palm oil they buy from Malaysia, because people are moving to urban cities, and urban cities, if people move to urban centers, 1 million people from China move to urban centers every month. And again, urbanization in India is also rising very rapidly. And as they move, they eat more butter, they eat more ghee, they eat more rice. They don't go to the farm, they're not manufacturing these things. So we're not aware of the incentives and positive actions in Malaysia. They're not aware that Malaysia has an opportunity. They're slowly coming to terms with that. China, southern China, the Cantonese-speaking group south of Shenzhen is very positive about Malaysia because there's lots of family here. And the relationships are very good. In fact, you don't have to speak Mandarin if you go south of Shenzhen. You only have to speak Cantonese in Hong Kong and south. The north don't understand Malaysia. The traditional investment arms are US, Singapore, Hong Kong, in Australia, and UK. Educating them to come to Malaysia for industry is very good. They are now coming in as developers, they're coming in as contractors. There is one group that wants to buy a golf course in Selangor, half-used or maybe underperforming golf course in Selangor, with land around it for bungalows to be built for a Chinese investor. So what he wants to do is, the golf is free, but you pay $1 million for a bungalow, single-story bungalow around the golf course. And he says he'll buy the whole thing. Actually, we haven't been able to find one for him. He's still looking. So any of you knows about a golf course available for sale in Selangor or near the airport that for a Chinese investor, please come to our office. We'll matchmake you along with them. Hong Kong and Malaysia have a long history of working with Malaysia. Mostly Hong Kong is fundamentally a fund managing place. Banks, financial institutions, pension funds, private equity funds, insurance companies want to do deals in Malaysia. They will fund joint ventures between China companies and Malaysian companies. Happy to do that. And we are in touch with all of them, and they are also directing clients to go to them and say, I want to invest in Malaysia, ask them to come to us. Malaysia, MPI in Malaysia is now going to be the first port of call for people to come through to ask us for investment advice in Malaysia. And once they come to us, we then point them in the direction of whoever is able to provide them. We give them a range of possibilities. We don't tell them what to do. We don't influence their decision. We go and tell them, we introduce them to a whole lot of people, and then they decide who they want to live with, who they want to work with. Japan after the tsunami has relooked at where they're going to put their people. We're now getting Japanese coming to Malaysia for investment. Not to stay, not under MM2H, but for investment. And they also think that Malaysia has got good long-term potential. There are Japanese companies in Japan, small companies in Japan, that bring 20 to 25 people at a time to Malaysia through what they have. They have their own gurus there who tell them that I've invested in Malaysia and made money. They write a book about it. Japanese are voracious readers. They buy this book, then they ring him up and say, can I come with you? And he brings about 25 people with him every holiday. They pay to come with him. And then he comes here and he goes to housing projects and offers them offers of 5 or 10 units at a time. And they take it, and he gets a commission from a discount from the developer for selling a block of 10 or 20 units to his Japanese clients. And the Japanese clients pay him for the advice to buy this into the block, so he makes a lot of money. He bypasses the agents completely. You guys are missing out on the market, I can tell you. One of the particular companies invited us to come and speak to the Japanese, to his clients. So I went the first time and I realized that he was using me, not the other way around. I wasn't using him, he was using me. So I said, I won't going back there anymore. But I asked him, how many properties have you sold? In 2011, he sold 85 homes to Japanese, and it's just one company. There are 4 of them floating around that I know of. There may be others going to Penang, going to Johor. But they also do the same thing in Thailand. They do this also in Vietnam, and Indonesia. So it's not just, they're not just ripping Malaysian agents off. They're ripping all the agents in the other countries off as well. So don't feel so bad. But they are coming in larger and larger numbers. Japanese industry is moving here. Japan considers Malaysia a safe harbor, a safe place to do business. And so they want to come here as well. So you're going to find a lot of people here. What happened? It came off. Oh dear. Sorry. Okay. South Korea, another country that's very, very favorable to Malaysia. South Korean economy is going through a slump right now. After the financial crisis, they asked their local investment companies like Korean Investment Corporation, KIC, which is the Kazana of Korea, and there are $40 billion US parked in Hong Kong. They're not allowed to bring the money back to Malaysia. Very much like Petronas. Petronas funds are all overseas, not in Malaysia. So to a large extent, they are supposed to go and buy overseas investments. So they decided to buy what we call a trophy investment. They went and paid, for example, $1.4 billion for the Hong Kong Bank Tower in London's Canary Wharf in 2010. And then Hong Kong Bank downsized and they lost 30% of their staff in Canary Wharf. They downsized the rentals, and suddenly the building is only worth 800 million. Now, all those guys in KIC lost their jobs. But the point is, Korea is a very profitable place to do business in if you know how to deal with them. And of course, we have Korean cities in Malaysia. There are 14,000 Koreans living in Kuala Lumpur, and about 5,000 in Penang. There are even 500 Korean families in Kota Kinabalu. So Korea is a very friendly place to Malaysia. There are Korean construction companies here. One of them built one of the Twin Towers. Samsung Construction is a big player in Malaysia, the oil and gas, and also the developers for example, the St. Mary's Towers. Indonesia, we only think about them as mates. I can tell you they're richer than us. Okay, so don't underestimate the power of the Indonesian market. They're very popular. Their economy has grown by 6%. Now, when you have a growth in a country like Indonesia of 6.5% over the last 6 years, you can see that the country has really progressed to a large extent to be a very powerful economy. 300 million people, 120 million live in one island in Java, another 80 million live in Sumatra, and the rest spread over the thousands of islands that are Indonesia. They are a viable trading arm. They are tired of Singapore. So they say Singapore doesn't respect them anymore. They want their money, but they don't treat them right. They prefer China. So they are re-looking at Malaysia as an investment opportunity. If you have relatives, if you have friends in Indonesia, talk to them about investing in Malaysia. We need Indonesian funds. They're moving outside the country. We like to move them here, the Riyadis and the Bumi PLCs and the Chiputras. We need to bring them here and tell them that opportunities they can develop here as well. Of course, once in a while you get a newspaper guy, or, you know, when some maid gets beaten up here, there's a big hue and cry in Indonesia. But I can tell you, it's only in the newspapers. In reality, it happens everywhere. So we are no better than the Saudis, who treat the maid just as badly. So that's true. So in the context, don't listen to what you read in the newspapers. On the ground, business is Indonesians are very pro-business, and they want to do deals. And they're prepared to buy office towers, they're prepared to buy condo blocks, they're prepared to buy development land. I have one client who wants 500 acres in Selangor to do a housing project. When I took him to see PKNS said, I don't need you, I can do the same thing, make more money, why I want to share with you? So send them back. But they're looking for a person who owns the land, somebody who's a landowner, 300 or 400 acres, and then they will come and do that. Now, what do they bring? They bring the construction finance, and they bring their own workers. No illegals. They bring their workers, and they take them back. And they'll build houses for them here before they arrive. That means they're very professional. And I can tell you they have system building, and one of them told me, I can deliver in Malaysia a terrace house for less than 200,000 ringgit. Maybe he can. I don't know. But they are very focused about going overseas and investing overseas. They're already very big investors in Indonesia, in Vietnam and in Cambodia. They're the biggest developers in Indonesia and Cambodia. Singapore is still our biggest investor in Malaysia, both institutional and local. More and more Singaporeans are buying a second home in Johor Bahru, purely because they look at JB as one day going to be easy to walk in and out of Singapore to Johor Bahru, once they have the touch and go passport organized, which is going to happen in the next 4 or 5 years, once Iskandar is fully taken up. So you're going to get that kind of relationship between Singapore and Malaysia. We always wanted Johor Bahru to be, Iskandar to be the Shenzhen for Singapore's Hong Kong. And finally, the tipping point is this year, with the Johor Premium Outlets open. How many of you have been there? It's very good, actually, surprisingly. It's cheaper than Kuala Lumpur. So, but they're still a work in progress. There's still another 17 or 18 shops coming there. They're going to expand the place to about 150 retailers from all over the world, including Japanese and Korean retailers, which are then not going to be so expensive as Pradas and the Gucci's and the other brands. So you're going to get that growing. You've got the Legoland that's opening up this year. You've got fantastic universities and colleges. Marlborough College is opening up in October this year. And I understand the next Queen's is coming to open the college herself, Middleton, the Duchess of Cambridge. So you're getting a lot of mileage out of the fact that it's going to be education, health, wellness facility, and there's a wellness center being organized between Temasek and Kazana in Iskandar, and a similar one in Singapore, because wellness and health is going to be a major factor for the aging population in Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, and the region. They took the capitalize on that facility. So Singapore is a valuable partner to Malaysia. They have the funds, they have the technology, and they have the talent that Malaysia doesn't have. And we can tap that talent in Singapore. We have a gallery in Singapore. Last year we had $106 million sales from our gallery in Singapore from the developers who were there. It's in the ground floor of the Singapore Stock Exchange building in Shenton Way. It's a B2B center, valuable center for investment, valuable center with nearly 100,000 professionals in the Raffles Place and across in the new Marina Bay Center, which is slowly expanding on the reclaimed land in front of our office. It's a great place to brand it. We have some major anchor tenants on the first floor. Some developers have taken permanent space in our mezzanine floor to market their property in Singapore on a regular basis. And InvestScale has just moved into our office to showcase what investments they can do, how they can help Singapore companies relocate to Malaysia. These are some of our events for the first half of this year. We are putting in there's an Indonesian show, there's a B2B network, Sabah, bringing Sabah in. We're going to Singapore with the iProperty, we are branding it together. We go to Japan, we go to Hong Kong, and go to MIPIM Asia again. So your objectives in going overseas is really, if units for sale, showcasing specific new projects, branding of the company portfolio, looking for investors, or looking to fundraising from foreign investors. Malaysia is the answer for you. And then you must also, if you come to MPI, you can ask us, what is your preferred? Do you want to brand your company with a private briefing? You want to go and meet private investors? You want foreign media coverage, real estate, home buyer exhibition, sponsorship at major real estate events? All this are your preferred format. We're dealing with all the major property developers by taking them across on a one-to-one basis to specific markets where they want to brand themselves and say, I want to go to Shanghai, I want to go to Seoul, I want to go to Tokyo, and I want to meet in potential investors for my commercial real estate, for my retail real estate. So if you can get that kind of business strategy, what we do is we are a platform. So if MIA members, all of you deal with different sectors of real estate. I know most of you are residential, but those of you who deal with non-residential real estate, those of you who deal with vacant land, those of you who want, the owners want foreign investors, come and talk to us. we can at least tell you what's available in the marketplace, what's available out there, who are the people who want to invest in Malaysia. And you know, unlike you guys, we don't charge a fee for our services. You guys charge a fee, we don't. So there's so much reason for coming through our office. You can email us if you like, go to our website, and look at the cross-border queries that we have. And these are some of the people who have come to us, have been unable to find a joint venture because we are just coming out of starting a new building. We have from Dubai, we have from Singapore, we have from Bangalore, India, Shenzhen, Jakarta, Shanxi, China, and so. So all these companies are looking for opportunities in Malaysia. It's all in your book there. If you think you have any investment that can match any of these, come and talk to us. Thank you very much.